Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. This afternoon, ECA's technical team will explore and discuss the key changes that have been proposed for the 18th edition Wiring Regulations Amendment 2. I will shortly hand over to ECA's Technical Director, Mike Smith, who will introduce our technical team and kick off the presentation. But before I do that, I should let you know that this is intended to be an interactive discussion. We want to hear from you and we want to answer your questions. So do please make sure that you use the questions box that should be on your screen now at any time during today's presentation. And our panelists will take some time both during and after the presentation to discuss those and hopefully provide some answers. Lastly from me, a full replay of today's session is going to be made available on ECA's YouTube channel, and that's at youtube.com/ECA Live. Be sure to check out our wide range of other videos that we have on there, previous webinar replays covering a wide range of technical and business topics. And with that said, I hope you enjoy today's session, and over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Omar. Hello, everybody, and good afternoon from me, Mike Smith. As Omar said, I'm ECA Technical Director. It's probably been a few months now since we had a national webinar such as this, when back in the spring we did our Technical Tuesday series on topics such as the prosumer. And these are still all available. You can watch these at any time, and there are links to these on our website. Cameras are off today, and that's not because we're getting shy. It's all of us are using our home connections, as you can probably appreciate. So we want to save as much bandwidth as possible. So that's why cameras are off, and you should be seeing the presentation front page. So today's topic is all about our favourite bedtime reading, of course, requirements for electrical installations, IET wiring regs. It's the 18th edition, BS 7671, IET, and Amendment 2. So it's the DPC. And yes, it is Amendment 2, but more about that later. As Omar said, we really do want you to post questions. The more interaction we have, the better. And of course, it does confirm that you haven't all fallen asleep. So please interact. It'll make a better experience for all of us. With me today, I have Gary Parker, Shahid Khan, and Luke Osborne from our technical team, all of which have been involved with the relevant BSI committees, subcommittees looking at regs developments, and therefore have an in-depth appreciation of the proposed changes. And yes, I would emphasise the fact that these are proposed. It is a DPC. This is what it's all about. We do need comments. But I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. I'll hand you over fairly quickly over to Gary, and he'll take us through the presentation with support from all the rest of the team. So, hello, Gary, are you there?
I am. Hello, Mike, you all right?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. So, I think without further ado, the floor is yours. So, take it away.
Magic. Thank you ever so much, guys, and good evening, everybody else. As we've said, this is all about Amendment number 2, the draft for public comment. As you can see on your screen there, it is very, 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 very much a draft at this stage. Whatever is talked about tonight, please don't take it as being read. This is what is coming in the standard. We'll go into that a little bit later on. Hopefully, though, we'll have a good evening. We can go through some things and we can have a chat about this draft for public comment, and we can talk about some of the changes, some of the pros and cons, and some of the opportunities that this will make. A couple of key points. It is very much only a draft at this stage, but more importantly, we need your input. We do need your voice. We do need your comments, and we'll tell you how about that throughout the whole evening and how we can do it. So if we can start the presentation now, we should get through this, hopefully, quite painlessly. But at any point, if you do want to ask a question, please do type away. Hopefully the slides will start moving along. There we go, here we are. So what we've got for you tonight is a little introduction and a little bit of history about where things are, where they come from. The presentation that we've got is based around the 7 parts, 7-ish, the standard and what is likely to be of issue. There's also a little summary and an element where we're going to ask you to do some stuff for us. Sorry, there's no free meals here. We're going to ask your help at the very, very end. Hopefully, though, we'll have a good time. So we'll go into the introduction if we could. You have to forgive us, there is a little bit of a lag on the screen. So what's happening, the introduction and where it's coming from. Shahid, Luke, you guys are aware of this and what's happened in the past. Why does things like this change? What's happened to Amendment 1?
Well, if I jump in here, Amendment 1 kind of came in earlier than you'd expect a new amendment to be released. That was earlier in February this year, and that was to cover changes that had come about, new technologies that allowed a change to the electric vehicle charge points, electric vehicle charging equipment. Particularly the previous edition of the 7671 had kind of pushed people to be using earth rods, and this now allowed a new device that allow people not to have to use TT systems and earthing rods.
Is that sorry there, Matt. Is that a free to view download then? The amendment 1.
Amendment 1 was available on the IET website. It was free to download.
So Shahid, what's Amendment 2 then? Is that just about one thing again, or is that about a few things?
Amendment 2 covers the entire document almost. It goes into various changes on effectively all of the parts and the appendices. So it's very, very important for people to read it and make their comments.
Magic. So as it says on the screen there, the purpose of today's presentation is to highlight some areas that might impact your work. It's only some areas. We've only got an hour there or thereabouts. We can't go through all 700 odd pages of it. So if you do get a chance, go back and, as Omar and Mike said, re-listen to certain elements, or check out the ECA's website, which has got some good bits on eca.co.uk/AMD2. So can we skip on to the next slide, please? We've mentioned a few times, and just in case you guys aren't aware, we are in a draft for public comment stage, and that very much is kind of what it says on the tin. It is a draft, and it is available for the public to comment on. Everybody can comment on it, and anybody and everybody should. If there's something you don't like, please do say. The guys and girls at the IET and at BSI work really hard on this. They will be the first people to say they're not perfect, but they work really hard to get this out and get it over to industry to comment upon. And they very, very, very much do appreciate anything that you can put in. So please, any comments you can get on, we'll tell you how to do that at the end. Please put in, and they will be discussed.
Is it?
Sorry, and Luke, these DPC comments, how do they work when they go in?
Well, I did have a question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Are all the comments actually looked at? Do all the comments get assessed and analysed, or is that just a rumour?
Oh no, absolutely. The guys and girls at IET and BSI take every single comment and they put them in a great big document and file, and they'll go through them individually. They don't have to look upon comments that aren't related to changes for this DPC. They will look at them for the next one. So anything you put in, it will get looked at. It might not get looked at immediately, but they will look at every single comment, providing it's a sensible comment. If you just put in generally a load of rubbish, mash the keyboard, that's not going to work. But again, on eca.co.uk/AMD2, we've got an example of how to put comments in. So it'll tell you what to put in and then how to put a solution in as well. But they are all looked upon. Yeah, it's a very good question. So everything that we're going to talk about tonight, again, just to reinforce, is only DPC. It's only a draft. Everything is up for debate. Everything is up for discussion. So anything you see on here or anything you see in the draft, don't take it as read. It will be in the final standard. Anything could change, could be altered, and it could be deleted. So this is where we, again, need your input on this to try and get those changes in a positive fashion. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Oh, there you go, draft owner. So a little bit of history, why it's happening. Now, fortunately, I can't remember the first iteration of the regs, but, well, possibly some of you guys might. 1882. I think Simon Burgess is listening tonight, so he was probably knocking around about then. Evening, Simon. You all right? And yeah, if you were around then, bless you, the first edition only had a few pages, 4 sheets or something of A4, but it still said do a good job, and it still required you to make sure the installation was safe. In 1992, it became a British standard, and from then we've started working with Senelec. Senelec, who are they?
Senelec are the European electrical standards community, so that's like a European-centric committee, of which the UK is one part. So that's what it is in brief.
We've only got a few hours, so we'll not go into Brexit on that one. But Senelec are European, and Luke, IEC?
That's the international version, so the International Electrotechnical Commission. So obviously that sits above Senelec, and we sit at this current moment in time below Senelec.
So it's all tied in together then?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Big family.
So we could get a good idea of what is going to happen in, say, 5 years or 10 years if we had a look at the Senelec or the IEC standards.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, okay. So is it right to say that things are constantly changing?
Yes, yeah. Things evolve, technologies evolve, and experiences as well.
Yeah, brilliant. So this is not going to be the last EPC. It's going to be the next EPC, and there'll be another one when things develop and evolve again.
It's not just sorry there, Gary. It's not just technology that drives the changes. Tragic incidents as well sometimes cause us to re-evaluate the regulations and perhaps upgrade safety aspects within some parts of the regulations as well.
So things like new ideas, new thinking,
yeah,
that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, at one time we thought voltage operator trips were a good idea. So moving on again, why do we have this new standard then? What is the purpose of it? Changes, as we've said, to Senelec, changes to technology and changes to methods and data that impact the standard. And it will continue to develop as we go along. New ideas, what was a good idea yesterday might seem to be a bad idea tomorrow. So we'll develop that. So that's a little bit of history and a little bit of background. If we can just move on again, please. So 7 parts. We're all fairly familiar with the 7 parts of the regs now. It's kind of been there for a while. Or has it? It's exciting, isn't it? 7671 looks the same. And as the guys mentioned, it'll look the same in most countries as well. You could pick up a Swedish version of their standard and it will be in a fairly similar layout. It's still got 7 parts plus a special new bonus part at the end, which I'm sure Luke is going to be very keen on. And we'll go through today and try and summarise the major changes. Yet again, just want to really emphasise and hammer home, these are just proposed changes. Nothing is set in stone yet. Whatever we discuss tonight, please don't go out and buy a load of those widgets that we talk about, because they might not end up being in the final iteration. Hopefully that's okay. Bro, next slide, please. Here we go. Now we're looking at the book. This first one, this is a proposed change. Shahid, I had a look online on the BSI site. I couldn't see how I could comment on this bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is no add comments box that's attached to the introduction to Amendment 2, which is where you'll find this proposed change. However, there is a comments box that's sort of halfway down that first page. That's the one that we would advise you to use to comment if you feel like this is an item that needs commenting on.
So this proposed change is putting in a date in March 2023, after which all installations shall comply to the current Amendment 2 version of the wiring regs.
That's right, regardless of when they were designed.
Regardless of when they were designed. So if you had a larger job that was designed today on the 18th edition Amendment 1, and I was installing in 2024, does that mean I have to then do it to the latest standard?
You would have to do it to Amendment 2, which potentially has detrimental impact in terms of profit margin and things like that.
I guess it doesn't emphasise whose cost this is, who has to pay for this then?
It doesn't, no.
No. Okay, so that I suppose there's some positives to that. At least you know where you're standing, and at least the client gets the newest job they possibly can, but it could have a bit of an impact, as you say, on costs on that one.
Yeah, it's difficult from a contract point of view. You typically agree to work to a certain standard at the contract stage, and you design based on that standard. What this is effectively saying is, regardless of that conversation and that contract, you may be forced to enhance some elements of that design at a later stage, with a question mark over the cost.
So it sounds like this could impact larger jobs more so than smaller.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, so Gary Shahid. So I mean, my background was working for one of the major contractors, as you know, for a lot of years. So if I've got a project running now, it was designed at least a year ago, and it's going to go on for 3 to 4 years. Are you telling me that my contract goes out the window and that, say, the last building and the last block of that site is now going to have to be to a new standard, but the rest of it to an old standard?
That's right. If the erection has not started prior to 28th of March 2023, yes, you would have to use the new standard. Yeah.
Stepping on the toes of contract law there, isn't it?
Does feel like that.
Interesting one. And maybe how does that fit with building regs? Because that's not what we do in terms of building regs.
Well, BS 7671 isn't legislation, is it? It isn't a law, so to speak. So I'm not sure whether this would necessarily be a positive or a negative. It gives clarity, but it also doesn't necessarily fit in with things like the approved documents, which have got legal status conferred, and contract law. So it might be a difficult one. It's probably going to be something that will affect the medium to larger size members more, but it's certainly going to be something that could affect anybody, really.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The best thing I could come up with for a date is a scanned photocopy image of the ECA diary in the bottom corner. Make sure you apply for your diary next year. If you can move on to the next slide, please, Omar.
Gary,
this is just a little one. Yeah.
Before you move on, there's just a couple of questions that we might want to pick up now.
Yeah.
So we've got one question in. Will we leave Senelec now that we're out of Europe?
It's 5:20 now. We've only got another 40 odd minutes. We can't answer that one in that time. Possibly not in the short term. It does seem that we are going to continue to be geographically part of Europe, even though we're not politically part of it. So it does seem that we will remain part. We'll probably stay with them just because they value us and we value them. But at the minute, throw 6 to start. Let's see where we end up on that one.
Okay, thank you. Just another couple of questions on publishing dates. Question: when is it going to be published?
Oh, geez, you've got that one.
I believe it's either March or April 2022. So they're effectively giving us 12 months of grace before it becomes enforced in March 2023.
Okay.
Oh, the
got,
DPP is
2022, 2023, fine. Okay. Just one more question before you move on, and that's if you commence a project on Amendment 1, would you need to change spec to suit Amendment 2 halfway? If it crosses that date of 28th of March 2023, Shahid?
If the installation process hasn't started, then the answer is yes. If it has started, it would still fall under Amendment 1.
Okay. Right, back to you, Gary.
Well, this next slide's quite easy. Parts 1, 2 and 3. There's a few little definitions that have been changed in part 2, a new definition for a consumer unit. There's quite a lot of new definitions about prosumers, which Luke will cover in depth, I would imagine, later on.
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it, Gary. Don't spoil it.
How many people have we still got on here now? 100 odd? Oh, we'll see if they stay on. And there's a definition for suburban, which has been thrown in, which might impact some people, but it's relatively minimal, we think. However, do please have a read and make sure that you're comfortable with that. Omar, if you could move on, please. Now, I think when we did the Project 18, one of the things that we mentioned on those roadshows is you can't have a change of regs book without changing the requirements for earthing and bonding. It's nice to move that around a little bit every now and again. This one has potentially changed as well. Have you seen these ones, Shahid?
Yeah. So with regards to these, they've got rid of the words extraneous conductive part out of the actual regulation, but what they've done is they've emphasised that it's metallic parts and that need bonding, main bonding, and they've given us a list of 4, I think, off the top of my head.
Yeah. So they haven't really changed what is necessary to be done. They've just changed the word.
That's right. They've tried to clarify it. Is the way that I see it. The slight issue is they've got rid of the words extraneous conductive part. That's potentially hazardous because that's got its own definition. So it actually means something, and it's already been defined in the book. We don't want to go back to a stage where we are bonding metal window frames, etc. So it's just something to think about on that one.
A couple of questions that have just come in there. I think following on from what was said earlier about the contract, how can 7671 supersede a legal agreement when it's non-statutory? Well, it probably can't, is the answer there. And how would this work for condition reports where things were installed to previous standards but are okay, but maybe advisories? I can't see that as impacting condition reports. Could you, Shahid?
No, not personally, no.
No, sounds okay. So a slight change to the phrasing, I suppose, around the requirements for earthing and bonding, but nothing really that is going to massively impact members. It doesn't say that you have to bond something totally different. That's right. That wasn't there previously.
Yeah, nothing's changed in terms of the intent. That's right.
Well, however, something has changed in the intent here, hasn't it?
It has. They've got rid of the option to risk assess out the use of 30 milliamp RCD protection on all socket outlets rated up to 32 amps. So in the DPC there is no omission of RCD element in there, which is potentially detrimental.
I know what's coming up with the next few slides, so I think this one and possibly the next few might be ones that we'll stick on for a little bit longer than normal. So RCDs on socket outlets, fine in all cases? Yes? No? Good idea?
Not in all cases. I mean, obviously it's really good to have in a domestic situation, but as you've got on the screen there, it can have impacts when you're putting these in front of IT servers, etc., telecoms industries, essential plant equipment. So yeah, there's certainly some risks that will come to light if this is enforced.
Yeah, I was chatting to a member this morning. Actually, he was putting in some 3-phase sockets and for a lift, I think it was, and the client wasn't 100% sure whether they should be on an RCD or not, and the member said no. don't want an RCD on the lift, do you? So we talked about the opportunity to work with the client and risk assess out, but there's a proposal to remove that. So that could affect quite a few of our members then, and the wider industry, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. This will have far-reaching impact if it does go ahead.
Okay, so this might be something that the listenership might want to contact us about, or go onto the standards development page and put some comments in, I would have thought.
I think definitely.
Yeah. As we've mentioned before, this is the only chance people can't moan about the things. People can't moan about changes after the event. This is their opportunity to interact with it now.
You've not met my ex-wife, Luke. Next slide, please, Omar. This one might be a one that we talk about for a while.
Your favourite subject?
1.7. Oh, yeah. Mandating of AFDDs. Shahid, what does 7671 say about AFDDs now? Are they mandatory?
No, currently it's only a recommendation.
Okay. And this new proposal for 421?
This would see AFDDs mandated, so a shall, almost on almost all single-phase circuits, less than 32 amp. The limitation of 32 amps is more a manufacturer thing rather than, anything more specific.
So 32 amp or less, all circuits. So in my house then, I would need AFDDs.
Yeah.
Now, technically, I'm a Yorkshireman. That sounds like it could be expensive potentially.
There's massive cost implications with this. I mean, over time, like everything else, chances are they will come down. But you're looking at, I can't remember the figures offhand, perhaps £200 per device. So perhaps a consume unit, a new installed consume unit containing AFDDs. I don't know, £1,600, £2,000. That's prohibitive.
What are the benefits of AFDDs, though? There must be some.
Limited. They're rather limited. The money would be better spent on other safety factors.
Okay.
It will
So
protect against arc faults, certain arc faults. That's the only thing. You can get nuisance tripping with them from devices that may be prone to this. There's been difficulty proving the operation of these, and I believe they're not updatable.
That's right.
Okay. I'm just looking at the draft for public comment now. One of the options to omit AFDDs is lighting circuits in dwellings. Why is that a thing to omit?
It strikes you as odd. It strikes you as odd straight away, doesn't it? That lighting circuits in dwellings is an exemption. So we're down to sockets within a domestic premises. The biggest reason for that is that AFDDs in themselves can't detect arcs less than, I believe it's 2.5 amps. So there's a limitation on that. It's effectively pointless putting it on a domestic lighting circuit because of that.
Yeah, it's got to have a certain load on, hasn't it, to be able for the AFDD to actually function and be able to see it. Okay, so there's a limitation there. So it's anything less than a 6 amp breaker is possibly not going to have enough load to make it work, and anything more than a 32 amp breaker,
they don't make them.
Okay, so it's a small amount.
And single phase as well. There's no 3-phase version either.
Okay, so it is a little bit more restricted. Luke, you said something about they're not updatable. Is that right?
Yeah, there's God knows how many algorithms are involved in the operation of these devices, and things change over time. So if there was a change to the algorithms in the operation, these can't be updated, so they become redundant devices. It's a mini computer in a way. So there's no mechanism there for these to be updated, as I mentioned.
Okay. So there's a few negatives, there's a few positives on them. I'm sure some people would be happy to see it clarified in 7671? Because at the minute it's a bit what they're recommended. We're not 100% sure where to fit them, how to fit them. Whereas if this change was to come in, at least everybody knows what to fit them on.
Well, that's it. It would give clarity, but perhaps not. Yeah, not in the right direction.
Yeah. Just a couple of questions that have come in. Sorry, this is going to backtrack again on a few bits here. A few questions about socket outlets. What if the socket were like the average 3-pin? I'm guessing that's in relation to the RCD and emission. I don't think the proposed change specifies.
It doesn't. It says all sockets rated up to 32 amps need to be RCD protected. So it doesn't make the distinction between 1363s or 603 or 9 commando style type plugs either.
Somebody else says, what is the issue with putting RCDs on? It would only trip if the equipment is faulty. Is that the case?
It's more to prevent nuisance tripping, and in some instances, if you take the example of perhaps a care home and somebody's using medical equipment that's plugged in via a BS1363 standard 13 amp socket, if that was something that was used for a life-saving application, then you know that could cause more danger if it tripped out.
Okay, so if you had something that had a high natural earth leakage, for instance. So you could have an RCD that where the equipment is perfectly fine, but it still ruptures the RCD. Question, I think this is possibly a typo on our side. So surely 32 amp circuits would not need AFDD. Probably this presentation should say not exceeding 32 amps rather than less than 32 amps. So a 32 amp circuit here would need AFDDs. Is there any approved test instruments for AFDDs?
I believe on the vast majority of them there is a functional test button. I don't think there is an instrument test as such that you need to perform on them. I think it's just a push button functional test.
That T button, don't they? Would AFDDs be suited for a shower or cooker rated at 40 amps? Don't think you can get them, can you?
That's right.
So I think it's just limited. The proposed reg does only talk about things 32 amps or less. So the question, the big issue is that the larger current draw circuits like showers are 32 amps more likely to cause biggest problems. Also, can they be tested like an RCD? Okay, a couple of things there. So the person who's put that question in, sorry, I can't see the names, so that the issue is actually related to bigger things rather than smaller things. Probably would agree with that. And can they be tested? I think we've covered that one off. How do you test AFDDs? Covered that one. You press the button. With reference to AFDDs, I have questioned a manufacturer on their use on lighting circuits, and they believe they provide protection. Although I've heard what you referenced with regard to a minimum arc fault current. What does BS 62606 say? So the British standard for AFDDs. My information has always come from the manufacturers on that, and they do talk about having a minimum load. So it'll be right to say that they could work on lighting circuits, but they just would need that minimum load. I'm guessing most of us now have got LED lights on our lighting circuits, which don't provide that load. Another one, how do we prevent nuisance tripping of 32 amp socket outlets supplying IT equipment in a data center when RCDs must be used? Well, at the minute, how do you prevent that, Shahid?
Well, at the minute, you would risk assess the use of the RCD out. I think that one deserves a comment in terms of the DPC. So yeah. whoever asked that question, it's probably worth a comment in the DPC on that one.
And I'm conscious of time. We've only got 25 minutes or so left. AFDDs, they're now able to function on ring circuits. Kept over here in the last few months that AFDDs don't work on a ring. I believe they do, but again, in a specific way. They may not always work depending on whether it's a series or parallel arc. on the actual ring itself, probably best to check out the really useful little guide from BEMA on that one, which is available on the BEMA website. So again, apologies, we've only got a short amount of time left, so if we can just skip on to the next slide, please, Omar. Regulation 422 requires that the safety element of the electrical design be documented when working in an area of increased fire. Jade, you've been looking at the fire requirements. What does this put on the contractor now? Or did it put anything on the contractor?
It's almost difficult to decipher really from the wording. The electrical designer is responsible to provide some information to the responsible person in terms of items that should be included in a fire safety manual as such. The question is, does this increase the workload and therefore the liability on the electrical designer? That would be my only question, which I'd actually throw back to you, if that's all right.
Okay, so if you are involved in aspects of fire engineering, I'm guessing a lot of the smaller members might not be, but some of the medium and larger might be. 422 could be an interesting area to look upon for them to see how that would impact them. Brilliant. Next slide, please, Omar.
Gary, just before you move on, all I would say is that the RRO fire safety consultation on the fire safety order is out at this moment in time. So there is a consultation which ends on the 12th of this month, which does talk about the responsible person and what information that they need to provide to, say, residents in higher risk buildings, and also whether risk assessments need to be fully recorded, even in small buildings with less than 5 employees and things like that. So there is a little bit of interaction with other standards and legislation potentially on this one.
And possibly also on the next slide as well, the same would apply, because this is also related to 422, which has introduced a new phrase of protected escape route and removed references to the BD criteria. And it defines protected escape route as a route enclosed with specified fire resistance construction designated for escape to a place of safety in the event of an emergency. It's quite hard to explain what these things are within a reg, so there's an appendix about this. I think, have you seen the appendix on this, Shahid?
I have. It's quite in depth. There's a lot of information in there. It talks about fire sterile zones within a building to maintain an escape route for as long as possible. Obviously, under the event of a fire, potentially a good idea.
Yeah, I suppose it clarifies things, because when we introduced things like an escape route into the regulations a few years back, people were confused as to what that was. Is it something that you use to get out, or is it a defined escape route as other British standards allow for? So it could be quite a positive to clarify that. But of course, Appendix 13 will give us some clarity on that. So again, for the medium to larger firms, it might be important to have a look at this one. Omar, if you could move on, please. This next one is very pretty. What a dramatic picture. Surge protective devices, where they're needed. Now, we've had lots and lots of questions come through ECA's outlines over surge protective devices in the past. And there's been a lot of, I think, misunderstanding as to where they are mandatory and where they are recommended and where they are just simply not needed. There's a change on the wording proposed here, isn't there, Shahid?
That's right. They've tried to, they've reworded the entire regulation to try and make it simpler. It's still not the simplest thing to understand, if I'm bluntly honest. There's quite a lot of information in there. However, the good thing is they use language such as intolerable, and they apply the idea of analysing and assessing risk in conjunction with the client. I think those kinds of terms and that kind of terminology is welcome.
Okay. Luke, do you have any areas you often deal with the energy efficient side and the green side of things? Any areas where SPDs are more useful for those technologies?
Yeah, obviously, with a lot of rooftop activity with solar PV, etc., they can be useful. But often for systems of suitable size, they have these incorporated into some of the devices. But yeah, so it doesn't really interact with your normal kind of need for these. But one of the issues I have with this one is the wording, the risk assessment to decide what's intolerable. It should be a risk assessment to really decide what risk is tolerable. So it seems a bit diametrically opposite to its intent.
Oh, excellent. So that could be something members want to look at and see if it, when they read the regs, the proposed regs, whether it makes sense. That could be a really good feedback to IET and BSI to say that this potentially is a good reg, but it's just a bit unclear, which would be certainly something that people could put in. If we could move on again, please, Omar. Oh, we do like a sticky label, don't we?
Labels.
In our industry, we do that. So lots of changes in section 5.1.4. Not limited to, but one of the areas is a potential for a reduction for labels on dwellings. Good thing, bad thing?
Depends who you ask. Yeah, what they're saying is for domestic premises, for dwellings, you don't need to have the various labels stuck on the front of the consumer unit. So that in particular is the periodic inspection notice, the RCD test button notice, and the mixed colours. If there are old and new wiring colours within a board, those three labels don't need to be there if it's a dwelling that we're working in. Yeah, mixed views on this one. Personally, I don't think that we should delineate between working within a dwelling or in a commercial/industrial environment. We need to have standardization across the entirety of industry. But let's just make it clear, they're not getting rid of the labels in its entirety, are they? They are replacing it
absolutely.
With another document. Is that right?
It's sort of a pack of info, isn't it? What I've seen of it, it's a pack of information that you hand over to the client.
Which there exists a danger there, doesn't it? Because people often don't have a very good filing system at home, so they would the onus is then put onto the homeowner to make sure that they keep a good record of all these things and they keep it in a safe place, which is doable. But again, with a lot of these changes, sometimes the customer needs to be taken on this journey, and if this does come in, then yeah, they need to be aware of this.
Okay, so it's I suppose there's pros and cons. You potentially in dwellings lose the labels from the consumer unit, but have to provide a pack, which possibly makes it slightly more attractive consumer unit, but there's information that is much easier to lose and never be found again. Speaking of dwellings, Omar, if you could move on for me, please. Regulation 531.2 now suggests that individual RCBOs in dwellings should be considered to avoid unwanted triggering. Good thing, bad thing?
Unneeded, really. The option was already there. By mentioning this, it's going to essentially make designers probably think that they have to do it.
Yeah, because I could put RCBOs in now, couldn't I?
Yeah.
Not stopped. It's not prohibited. I could also put a dual RCD board in. It's not prohibited. Oh, just a couple of questions come through. If my iPad is worth 400 quid and a manufacturer's SPD is 100 quid, do I need to fit the SPD or the value of my iPad is more than fitting the SPD? Oh, hang on. We've got 13 minutes left. I probably couldn't answer that one question all that time. Sorry, I don't know who it was who posted that, but if you're an ECA member, ring up the helpline tomorrow and I'll have a chat with you about that. Possibly set aside an hour. If the information on the labels is for the homeowner or the occupant, how does this impact on rented properties? It's a good question.
That's
what
a very
happens
good
when
question.
there's a tenant in there? Would you still need to provide a label?
That is a very good question. I think that definitely needs to be reflected at the DPC stage, especially
Really
if you think about RCDs and the prevalence of these devices, which are all to do with safety. But that safety could be impaired if the functional test button is not pressed. A label within a rented property could make the difference.
So would it be incumbent on the landlord to pass that information to the tenants?
I think they would have to.
A bit like what you'd have to do with things like smoke alarms and information like that.
Yeah, in that instance, it's probably worth having a copy available.
Brilliant. Okay, Omar, if you wouldn't mind skipping on to the next one, please. All about RCDs again tonight, isn't it? Now states, the 531.3.3 now states that A-type RCDs should be used for generic purposes. Well, in the past, we've always used AC for generics, and A's where necessary. Potential to remove A-type RCDs. How does that sit with people? Is that positive or negative?
To be honest, we're one of the few countries that still readily uses type AC, but because it's difficult to define the amount of DC that's on a circuit, should it be prescripted that we need to change these over? And surely that's going to have impact on, it will have impact on any additional circuits that are being put on, and also any additional fixed equipment.
Okay. I'm just conscious of time, so we'll try and move on a little bit quicker. Omar, if you can flick on to the next slide. This one could be a little bit controversial for some. 542.1.2.202, inclusion of a requirement to mandate foundation earthing on new installations and a new annex in 542. Oh, this one was potentially around previously, wasn't it? This one sounds familiar.
Yeah,
It was. Go ahead, Luke.
Okay, I'll pick this up. Yeah, this was around in the past, and yeah, it is finding its way into this DPC again. Whilst I mean, personally, I see foundation earthing is quite useful, especially as we go forward with the prosumer environment, which we'll come on to in the future. Again, it's kind of taken away the requirement from the DNO to provide sufficient and suitable and robust earthing system. But outside of that, why is this in the bill? Why is this in the electricity regulation? Surely it should be BS 7671. Surely it should be part of the building regs, as they're going to be the people that the builders are going to be responsible for putting this in, and also that's a I've lost the word, regulation, as opposed to an advisory piece like the BSM 671. I feel it's misplaced in this document.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Where the law is rather than in the guide.
Yes.
Yeah, it should be cited in a statutory instrument initially, and then a code of practice such as 7671 can point at that statutory legislation. Hence why it's better placed in the building regs. Another reason for that is sparkies are usually not on site when this thing is going to be laid.
Mm-hmm.
So who's responsible for laying it? Who's responsible for checking it? How do we know what the test value is going to be?
Something maybe we should have pointed out at the very, very start after Mike's introduction, when he said that we'd been involved in this standard. Just to be clear, we've only been involved in the ones that you like. The ones you don't like, that was somebody else. It wasn't me. It was somebody else. So if you didn't like them, it wasn't. So there's there's some definite positives here for foundation earthing, but it may or may not be in the right part or the wrong part, or it may not be feasible. So again, if this is something that impacts you regularly or could impact you, might be something to comment upon. Next slide, please, Omar. So that should take us out of part 5 and into part 6 now, inspection and testing. Not masses have changed, but one thing that has updated about insulation resistance testing on circuits with sensitive equipment. Now, it may not impact many, but it might impact some. It emphasises that all cables must be tested at 500 volt DC. Now, we've always done 500 volt, haven't we? Or has there ever been any exceptions?
If you've got connected equipment, then you tend not to test it at 500 volts because you could cause damage to the sensitive equipment that's attached to that circuit.
LED lights, USB socket outlet type things, these
right.
could potentially cause issues. Okay, so if there's any members out there doing a lot of inspection and testing work on new installs, that might be something to comment upon. Omar, if you wouldn't mind just skipping on to the next slide, just while you're doing that. Questions come in. Isn't it the case that unwanted tripping is caused by protecting 6 circuits on one RCD? Well, it could
be. It depends. There's already a regulation that talks about limiting the amount of earth leakage per RCD, so that's already taken care of in the existing regs.
Yeah, 30% of that.
That's right. 531.3.2 item 3, if I remember rightly.
Tell you what, at 6 o'clock at night. Yeah, but there's always still the option to put RCDOs in. That's always been there.
Yeah.
How can designers know for sure that an A-type RCD is the correct type of RCD? Ooh, good question.
Very good question,
doesn't it? At the end of the day, you've got to design your circuit for that use. If you know that there's going to be 8, 9, 10 milliamps of DC leak, then an AC isn't going to be any good.
That's right.
Okay.
Often these things are recommended or required by manufacturers for certain devices. Some of the new 3-phase washing machines, so okay, they're working on a single phase, but they're using a 3-phase motors. I can't remember the make. I think they might be one of the more expensive ones. I think they specify in their installation guide or manual that they should be protected by an RCD type F. And also with EV charging equipment, EVCE, etc. They do specify the types of RCDs that should be used.
Okay, well, so part 7. Oh, there's a lot of part 7s. We thought, right, we can write everything out, but decided it's possibly best not to. There's numerous changes, too much to run into. However, some things that we've highlighted are coming up on the next couple of slides, please, Omar.
Although I'll just mention at that point, because I don't think we cover it. There's an extensive increase in part 7.1.2, which is for solar PV. So if there's anyone that is involved in the realms of solar PV installations, this is now a much more prescriptive section. So it would be really good to get your comments on if you think this has been addressed correctly, or if you think it's too onerous or too difficult to understand. So yeah, as we mentioned before, this is your chance to comment.
Brilliant. 701, while you're here, Luke, actually, I think you've been having a look at this. There's a new reg being put in, proposed to be put in, about selve in bathrooms. Is this prohibiting selve? Or?
No. Yeah, there was a lot of talk on talk around that. This was actually prohibiting the use of selve in bathrooms, but it's not as strict as that. You just have to be careful on what equipment you use for providing selve within a bathroom. This is more to do with an issue with the product standard, which I believe is 62368. Which some devices are manufactured to, and these wouldn't be able to prohibit. These wouldn't be able to limit a dangerous voltage going through under a single fault condition. So these could have included, but they're not limited to, power over Ethernet devices that people, etc., that people may want in their bathroom for connected equipment going forward. You do still have the option, as you did before, to install Selv as long as it is provided by an isolation transformer. So as long as the power to it is provided by an isolation transformer. So it's not as difficult a regulation as previous, but without this there, it could have been very difficult.
A big thank you to Darren Crannis for providing us with a picture of his bathroom there. Thanks for that, Darren. Next slide, Omar. Another one in part 7. Oh, outside lighting requires that any lighting that is accessible to the public. 30 million. Okay, so all outside lights, so anything that's accessible to the public. So my local pub round the corner would have to put 30 milliamp RCD on its outside lighting. Is that right? I guess it is. Would that cause a potential problem with nuisance tripping?
Well, it's certainly going to increase the possibility.
Yeah, excellent. Well, maybe that's something to consider if you're doing those sort of things. Right, now I don't know if you've got your horse with you here, Luke, but please get it ready, and I hope it's high enough. Omar, next slide, please. That's part 7 done.
Let me just get on my soapbox to get onto my very high horse.
Now, just before you do, we've, as Mike said earlier on in the year, we did a few presentations to the regions, and this was probably one of the most popular ones that we did. This is a potential great element of the industry. This is a potential wonderful part for our members. Isn't that right, Luke?
Yes, in a sense. I'm a big fan of the idea of the prosumer. We've mentioned it numerous times, different presentations over the past few years. And Chapter 82, so this is the new addition to the regulations, starts to bring this into public consciousness, I guess. So it's presents the new term, the prosumer. So it's the energy prosumer. So it's someone who produces and consumes energy, and introduces the concept of the prosumer's electrical installation. And it's showing the interplay of on-site generation and storage, and with the smart grid of the future. So, I mean, you get many buildings operating like this already. Some may have on-site solar, they may have battery storage systems, they may even be using vehicle-to-grid systems. And it's how these all interlink together, and couple that with load shifting as well. So you've got the advent of the smart grid, or the smarter grid. The grid's been smart for many years, but it all starts to interplay in a bigger picture. And this new chapter starts to demonstrate and show the options for doing this. To be honest, it's very high on concepts. It shows you lots of different methods to do this, from a single building to multiple buildings coupled together in various fashions. But it's quite low on detail in how this can operate. So it's more an informative chapter at this moment in time. And as these things go forward, it's the concepts and the way to do these things will massively increase. So we'll start to see other more informational pieces or references within this chapter to external papers, etc., etc. So it starts to highlight where we need to go to help in our journey to achieving net carbon zero as soon as possible. So yeah, I'm a massive fan of this. I'm glad that it's starting to make its way through to the mainstream. But like I say, it is quite low on how to do, just more of an information piece. See, it wasn't too bad, was it?
No, that was good. That was good. Daft question. Where's Chapter 81? Chapter
81. Well, the reason this is Chapter 82 is because it was an IEC document from 2018 that was released. 60364 is where we take most of our information for the wiring regs, and that was part 8, Chapter 2. There's also parts 1 and 3 as well. And part 1 is essentially what's our chapter appendix 17. Appendix 17 kind of links into that, so energy efficiency measures. So you'll possibly see more of a suite of this chapter going forward, or more of a suite of this part and the differing chapters in the future.
Well, thank you for that, Luke. Just a couple of questions that come in. Surely we have to test at 500 DC on all new installations. There is a part of the reg that talks about where you've got surge protective or other devices likely to cause, likely to be damaged by the testing, where it's not practicable to disconnect them, e.g. like you've got a fixed outlet with an SPD in it. The test for that particular circuit may be reduced to 250 volt DC, but the installation resistance shall have a value of at least 1 megohm, and that's sat on page 232 of the regs, and that's been there for a while. Another guy has put in, how much will it cost to become a prosumer? Installing PV, other microgeneration equipment, adding some battery storage, etc., EVs. Surely this is prohibitive. I think this is one for you again, Luke.
Thank you very much. To be honest,
we're 3 minutes over, so don't, you know.
Okay, make sure your dinner's being kept warm. To be honest, it can cost as much or as little as you want. People can interplay with this as much as possible. The costs of solar PV, for example, have come down massively. Okay, you don't get feed-in tariffs anymore, but you get smart export guarantees. And also you're getting time of use tariffs, smart tariffs, which are available to people. So if you can buy electricity when it's cheap, sell it back to the grid for double your money. So yeah, you can export to grid through, I think, OVO and Octopus for like 30 pence per kilowatt hour. You may buy that in at 13, 14 pence a kilowatt hour. If you generate it, it's not costing you anything to generate, and you're selling that back. And also, as this becomes more and more, as these become more and more mainstream technologies, the price also comes down as well. But the biggest saving is with new builds. So you start to incorporate building integrated solar panels into the roof. It's already there. You're displacing existing equipment, and also your heat pumps and your load shifting, etc., etc. It all starts to become part of the normal environment. So yeah, any early adopting equipment, any early adopters to this technology, they will find the prices quite expensive, but because of the passion for it, they start to then help the prices to come down. So yeah, it will be expensive in the, it will be a higher premium in the initial, but yeah, it will come down.
I'd just like to echo that sentiment. It's a massive growth area for our members. It's something that we should support. We are the future in terms of early adopters and developing this technology and getting it out there and creating this smart world. You know, and it needs to happen. The government's targets in terms of net zero carbon by 2050. It's there. We need to start adopting this technology. It's coming through, and it's coming through thick and fast. And it's something that's really exciting.
It's opportunities. It's really positive,
exactly.
I think.
Yeah, there's many opportunities now for new entrants to the industry who can see that they can now be part of the solution to the problem of climate change by deploying these devices and enabling this to happen.
Brill. So, sticking on the good news, if you don't mind skipping on to the next slide, please, Omar. Appendix 6. So that was part 8 done. We've looked at a few of the appendices. Possibly one of the biggest ones to look upon is Appendix 6, where it has massively reduced the number of boxes requiring ticking or NA on a schedule of inspections. Guys, what's your thoughts on this? More boxes good, more boxes bad?
More boxes bad, usually. The longer it takes to complete this documentation, or the more prohibitive it is, it leads to errors. People don't necessarily do it properly. So the fact that it's been reduced and incorporated into the EIC form itself, the second page to be exact, is a good thing. That doesn't mean that the information has disappeared. It's just easier to fill in for the guys that do it regularly, day in, day out.
So you still have to inspect.
That's right.
You just don't have to fill out as much paperwork. Is that right?
That's it.
That's got to be a positive, hasn't it?
It's brilliant.
I've never met an electrician yet who said they got into the trade because they want to fill out forms. I think it's dropped from what, 180 odd to something like 13 boxes. I would have thought that would be fairly well received. I would hope, anyway. Well, next slide, Omar, and this is the last potential change that we're going to look upon this evening. And Appendix 17, updated energy information. Again, Lou, do you want to cover this one?
Yeah, no, I'd say this is another welcome addition from my point of view. It's giving more an increased awareness for the importance of energy efficiency. So yeah, as well as having more generation, the best thing we can do is reduce our energy usage. Okay, through insulative measures as well, but yeah, by knowing that the equipment we're using is designed correctly and low energy use. One of the main things with this, it does start to put more onus on the designers and the need for clients to have more of an awareness of the energy that they're using. And it does also raise the idea of having periodic inspections to ensure that the energy efficiency measures that have been put in that are in use are performing correctly. So these could be power quality equipment, power factor correction, etc., as well as your basic energy efficiency devices. So yeah, again, a welcome change. But that's my personal view on it. Others may think differently.
No, that's the exact point of having a DPC. That is the exact point. Everybody's got an opinion, and somebody might disagree with you. It doesn't mean that they're right or wrong. They just have the absolute right to disagree, and they can put those comments in. And if they think it's a bad idea, say it. If they think it's a good idea, leave it as it is. Just on that one,
I said use your vote.
Absolutely. That's the most important thing. It's not wrong. It's just your chance to speak. A couple of questions that have come in. Somebody says more boxes is good on the test sheet as it gives a regulation prompt and reinforces learning of 7671. Just to emphasize what Shahid said there, the schedule of inspections hasn't disappeared. It's just you don't need to fill them in. So the information is still within the appendix. It just doesn't need a tick next to it to say you have inspected it or it's not applicable.
So basically, sorry, Gary, just to extend on that. So out of the 13 that are present there, there's about 10 items for each of those ones that sit behind it that people need to still check and make sure that the inspection is conducted properly. It just speeds up the process.
Yeah, you still do it, you still check it, you just don't tick a box for each individual element, I think is what you're saying there.
That's it.
And will this new prosumer technology and all of its electronics require over voltage protection? It depends where you are, and what you're doing, is the short answer. If you're in an area where it's high risk, it might do. If you're in an area where it's low risk, it probably won't. Right, Omar, if you don't mind just moving on. Thank you, everybody. That was not too bad, actually, in terms of timing. I thought we'd go a lot further on that one. So, summarising, this is just some of the changes that we've picked out. It's not all of them. There are a lot of major changes throughout the rest of the book that may impact different members in different ways. We would encourage you to review the document and have a look at it and see what those changes are that impact you. If you don't mind skipping on again, please, Omar. Now, it is your turn. This is where we're going to ask you for help. As Mike said, ECA support its members by sitting in these committees. And with all things democratic, you've got the voice. Your voice counts. We will take your thoughts forward. If you put them forward, we can argue them. We do this through our technical committee. But individually, you can put any changes in that you think you want to comment upon. And we would massively, massively encourage you. And the good guys at the IET and the BSI would also massively encourage you to put your comments in. in the past, ECA members have been instrumental in changing what has been proposed and what didn't go in. I think, Luke, you said it. If you don't vote, you can't complain.
Exactly.
Please vote. And how do we do that? Omar's got it on the next slide for you. So, nice and easy. Go to standardsdevelopment.bsigroup.com. Register an account. It's free, absolutely free. And put your comments in that you feel strongly about. But do it in the correct format. If you just put in, don't like this, load of rubbish, it will not be listened to. When you see the standard, when you've got the comment box, you can click on the comment, put your comment in, and then put a suggestion as to how it should be changed. That's really important that you put that suggestion. That gives the committee something that they can look upon. But also, do please have a look at eca.co.uk/AMD2. This has got some useful information on for you about the comments. We've got an example comment. We've also got a little survey on there that we'd like you to fill out if you get a couple of seconds of your precious time to go on there and fill that in. This helps us in the DPC period and post it when we can go in and talk to the committee and say, look, the ECA have put a comment in on this particular subject. We are just one voice, but we represent thousands and thousands of contractors. And they've also commented and said this, and they've also put a little note on our survey. It gives it a lot more gravitas to anything and everything you say. So anything that you want to put a note about, have a look on standardsdevelopment.bsigroup.com. As I say, the guys and girls who work on that committee work really hard to get it in as good a situation as they can. But it isn't perfect, and they do really, really appreciate anything and everything you say. So we've had on this tonight Shahid Khan, Luke Osborne, and myself, Gary Parker. And personally, thank you very much for this evening. It's been quite good fun. It's been really good fun. I've really enjoyed myself. Guys, have you got anything you'd like to say?
No, just thank you for attending.
Yeah. Ditto, and yeah, as we mentioned numerous times, yeah, use this opportunity.
Well, okay. Mike, thanks. If you wouldn't mind putting your gin and tonic down.
It's about that time, isn't it? Absolutely. We've run over by 15 minutes, but as you can appreciate, there's a lot to go through, and we really would like you to just explore all those topics a little bit more and come back to us. I just wanted to pick up a couple of things, if I may, before we move on. There was a question quite early on about BS 7671 superseding a legal agreement. Just be very, very careful. Contract terms. If your contract says that this installation shall be to the latest wiring regs edition, it's a very common term. So quite often people get caught out when there's a change, so just be careful of that one, please. And just on the question about type of RCDs for designers, how do they know? What it will mean is a lot more emphasis on designers actually engaging in consultation with their end clients. You've got to understand what that circuit is doing, what it's supplying, the equipment that's actually going to be used. Or you need to make a statement that this has been designed for something in particular, okay? So just be wary of those, which often come out in terms of a contract and dispute later on. So if, guys, you've all exhausted your comments and questions, we have run on. We will do some more sessions, but thank you all for your time. It's been very informative for me. I hope for you. So keep safe, keep well, and thank you. Good night.